Growing up, it's always been me and my mom, as both my parents divorced when I was very young. I had never met my dad or knew who he was. All I know is that he was no longer around. Because of this, I had to grow up pretty fast and be the man of the house and help my mom with tasks that normally my dad would have done, I assume. One of the hardest tasks I had to do was always be ready to defend me and my mom in the middle of the night in case someone or something tried to break in. Luckily, nothing like that ever happened until this one particular night, a stormy night, sorta like this one. You see, sometimes my mom would get up in the middle of the night, as would I, either for a late night snack or to use the bathroom or get a glass of water, or just to make sure all the locks were locked on the door and windows in case we didn't reassure ourselves right before going to bed. We lived in a pretty nice neighborhood, a very safe feeling neighborhood, so getting up in the middle of the night, walking around, talking to each other in case one of us was awake was never really out of the ordinary, and we were used to it. But one night, like I said, a stormy night, I got up in the middle of the night to use the restroom, and then I heard my mom's voice calling me from downstairs, saying, "Honey, can you come here for a sec?" And me being half asleep, without thinking twice, I said, "Okay, coming," and I started to walk down the stairs. But before I could even walk down one step, something quickly grabbed me from my mom's room and pulled me in, closed the door, and held my mouth shut. My mom said, "Shh." I heard that too. To this day, I don't know who or what that was. All I know is it sounded exactly like my mom's voice, and I'll never forget this night. When I was younger, one of my favorite things to do in the summer was to hang out with all my friends, park at the beach, dig a hole in the sand, and create a campfire, and just talk and have a good laugh with some beers, without a care in the world. This one night, though, would change everything, and it made me stop doing this fun activity. Me and about 10 other of my friends all set up camp around right before dusk, and the night started off great. We told stories, scary stories, gossiped about other people, what new things had happened to each of us, and just small talk like that. We stayed up pretty late, but of course some of them couldn't hang and would eventually start falling asleep one by one, either in their cars, in the back of their cars, or just on the sand passing out from too much alcohol. I was one of the last ones that fell asleep, but not for too long, because later on that night, around what I assume was 3 or 4 a.m., I woke up to something that I was not expecting. It was to the sound of the most beautiful melody I have ever heard in my entire life. So beautiful that it touched my heart and made me shed a tear the moment I heard it. So beautiful that it enticed me to get up and look around to see where it was coming from. But nobody was around, and all my friends were all deep asleep. But I did listen closely and heard that it was coming from the ocean. I instantly started walking towards the ocean and into the shallows. It was as if my body had no control over itself, and I was taking one step at a time. But all I could focus on was that beautiful humming melody coming deep within the dark ocean. It was as if nothing mattered and nothing had ever mattered, but only this moment and this moment alone was everything, and everything I had ever hoped for was this melody. Like a new flame of desperation, of hope had been lit inside my heart, and all my problems would be solved if only I would just get closer and closer to this sound. When all of a sudden I felt a tight, firm grip on both my arms and was being yelled at, saying, "What are you doing?" I snapped out of it, only to notice that the water was already up to my chest and that I was that deep. I was so confused. I looked behind me and it was my friend, two of them actually, and they were asking what I was doing as they were dragging me back to shore. I couldn't even say anything. I was speechless. I was just plain confused. What was I doing? Why was I here? How did I not notice that I was already this submerged into the water? And to this day, I still question myself and question what that beautiful sound was. I'll never know, but what I do know is that if it weren't for my friends, I probably wouldn't be here right now to tell this story. Every morning around 4 a.m., I walk to the bus stop. It's always dark because the sun hasn't risen yet. You might be wondering, why on earth would I be doing such an early shift like this? And trust me, I know, I'm not a morning person at all either. But I figured I hated working because it took up most of my day. So this way, I'd be done extra early and have the rest of the day to do whatever I wanted. Besides, I was trying to save up for a car. That way I didn't have to take the bus anymore. I always viewed life like this, like steps in order to get to your goal. I think a lot of people do. In order to meet a certain goal, you must meet the requirements. And in order to meet the requirements, you must do the tasks necessary to get those achievements. For me, this was getting a new car, as this would open up new doors for better opportunities that I had planned. Well, on this particular day, my outlook on life and perspective on everything would change completely. You see, every time I would walk to this bus stop, there would never, ever be anybody there. Except for when there was. On this particular day, an old man sitting there before I even got there, wearing a black trench coat and a dark fedora-looking hat. I was a little surprised at first, but then I thought, I guess old people do get up pretty early sometimes, and I hadn't had this shift for too long. It was bound to happen. I'm not the only one who lives around here, and this is a public bus stop. I sat on the other bench, next to him, just patiently minding my own business and waiting for the bus to come. It was a little awkward, I'll admit. After a few minutes, he slowly turned his head towards me and said, "You're a little too young to be getting up this early, aren't you?" I looked at him and said, "Yeah, work though." There was a long pause, and he said, "Work, huh? It's always work." I looked at him again and said, "What do you mean?" Then he looked at me again and said, "Are you happy?" The question caught me off guard, and I said, I mean, generally, yeah, I guess you could say. Then he said, generally, and I guess, huh? Let me ask you this. If you could do anything else for the rest of your life, would it still be coming here every day at 4 a.m., waiting for the bus, and going to work? And before I could answer, he said, if it's anything different than what it is you're doing on a daily basis now, then you are not truly happy, nor have you ever known what true happiness is. And then I said, but that's life, isn't it? I mean, you sort of have to work because we need money to survive, to be able to eat, to provide a roof over our heads. I mean, what's money without work, right? He looked down at his shoes and chuckled. We yearn for meaning in a meaningless universe. You know, I used to be just like you. I too had forgotten the meaning of life. But then I remembered, just before I died, in the end, nothing mattered. My eyes widened. Did I just hear that right? Died? As I looked at him, asking him. He looked straight into my eyes, as if peering into my soul, and said, the only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. And with that, he was gone. Just like that, vanished. Nowhere to be seen. I looked around confused and shocked. My life would never be the same after this encounter